Hello, folks. Well, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. Well, the world has gone insane. But the question is, what was your role in it? Are you guilty by omission or commission? Yes, the world has gone insane over the last decade or two, as I keep pointing out to you. And in a way, I'm really not your friend in one respect, as I'm positioning myself to tell you, I told you so. And I'm telling you truths that once heard, you thereafter have to actively suppress your guilt for doing nothing. And that's why we are in the problems that we're facing today. If you felt like the Western world, if not the world as a whole, has gone insane over the last few decades, you're correct. The madness has a name. It's called political ponerology, the study of how psychopaths take over societies. According to Polish psychiatrist Andrew Lobaczewski, psychopaths, sociopaths, and individuals with deep psychological disorders infiltrate institutions, not by merit or integrity, but by their unrivaled ability to lie, manipulate, and destroy. The Democrat Party has been doing this for years. They first seized control of the media that gave them cover. The result of pathocracy, where the system is ruled by the disorder of where moral, competent, and sane people are pushed out, silenced, or destroyed. We saw this under the Obama and Biden administrations, where the Justice Department was weaponized against conservatives and Christians. The IRS harassed conservative groups. And now we recently found out that the Southern Poverty Law Center gave money to hate groups to act up so that the SPLC could deceive donors and raise more money. That's your raison d'etre, your reason for even being. They had to justify the reason for being. They were creating racism and division, all to justify their existence. Numerous indictments have been filed against this group. Now, let's get honest with one another. You know that from your day-to-day life that racism and all the other isms you are warned about do not exist to the extremes these Soros-type groups want you to believe. Again, you are being gaslit. Stop it. Just stop and think for a change. Moreover, white privilege doesn't exist either. Stop being the victim of the power of suggestion by these lunatics. Here is how pathocracy develops and how psychopaths take over societies. You have heard me talk hundreds of times about the mental illness and psychosis of the left and their political party, the Democrats. I even wrote a book about it, America's Systemic Psychosis. Essential psychopaths rise to the top, lacking empathy, driven by narcissism, manipulation, and sadism. As spelled out by Liam DeBoer, they use society as a playground of power in a corrupted system. Their evil traits aren't a liability, they're an asset to them. Schizoids serve as the ideological architect, detached and theoretical. They create inhuman policies and do so with utopianistic logic, population lockdown agendas, safe supplied drug programs, and all detached from their human cost. Spellbinders are the charismatic mouthpieces, celebrities, pundits, and influencers who captivate the public with slogans about equity and safety, disguising tyranny as compassion. They depend upon the simple-minded and flood the country with illegals who cannot contribute to the country and need welfare. And what they don't get from that, they get through criminal enterprise. The one thing they all have in common is that they all vote Democrat. The spellbound are true believers and hypnotized. These are the foot soldiers of the regime, convinced they're on a moral crusade while defending totalitarians, adaptive conformists who know better but comply. They just follow orders to keep their jobs, reputations, or social standing. So many are an easy catch, and they are atheists who think they, oddly enough, can be sanctified by their false compassion or silence. The resistors, many being my audience, see through all the false empathy and with moral clarity, but they're hunted, censored, and scapegoated for refusing to kneel. Then there are the bystanders, the majority of the population who are confused, which is more a product of their intentionally implemented dumbing down of public education. Some are afraid and slowly adopt the regime's norms just to avoid conflict. The silence of many who resist or know all is not right enables the system to metastasize. Look around. Violent criminals are set free while whistleblowers exposing government corruption are harassed, as is occurring with Nick Shirley in California, as the government there is passing a law to prevent the very disclosure of fraud as Shirley's investigative journalism is exposing. Can you believe that? I talked with Nick at length a few months back. He's a 20-year-old. He puts so many of us to shame. Here he is doing this, and it's saving basically the country at 20 years of age. What were you doing at 20? What are you doing now? Then you have many who are threatened with their kids who are taught gender dogma while literacy collapses. Bureaucrats push equity while freezing bank accounts. None of this is accidental, folks. It's the end state of Ponerology. They reward disorder and punish sanity as extremism. The system rewards the disorder and punishes the moral. This is not liberalism or progress. It's a psychological coup. Until we recognize that, we're not fighting back, nor against bad ideas, but pathological people. And with that, we will keep losing ground. This is not left versus right, it's sanity versus madness. And until sanity takes power back, the collapse will continue. Given the dire consequences of what we face, if you do not start fighting back, then you are part of the madness. That's why I'm reaching out to you to do something, more than just be subservient and compliant, because they will end up gassing you in the end. I rest my case on history and the hundreds of millions who have died at not just the hands of the psychopaths, but those who stood by and did nothing. We are in a period of capitulation, not aggressive self-preservation. Shame on us. Just like those in Iran, they are so radical and deluded that even in their ashes, they bluster and threaten us, even at this stage. The only solution is obliteration. It takes that kind of strong mental mindset and attitude to protect yourselves. The psychosis of the left is that they would rather die than let you live in peace. President Trump has made many cowards uncomfortable because he is showing what it takes and what it looks like to be a man and a real leader. So now this is where you may need therapy, because you will have to take on the mindset of those in the special forces. There is an enemy, and there is you, and there is no coexistence. So you're going to have to make your choice. Fight on your feet or live on your knees. Those are your parameters. Time to man up and learn to hate what is wrong, evil, dangerous, and destructive to your life and liberty. Yes, I'm sorry to break it to you, but there are people in our country, and particularly our government, who hate you, hate our country, and want both dead. So start fighting on your feet, like I said, or learn to live on your knees. I don't plan to be living on my knees, and that's why I'm doing these podcasts. I am fighting on my feet, and I'm trying to engage the rest of you that are sitting on the couches watching Netflix doing nothing. What's your checkbook say? What does your calendar say? You can gauge yourself by that. If you're doing nothing, you're part of the problem. Now let's take a look at the indictment against Tyler Robinson for the aggravated capital murder, that is, the assassin of Charlie Kirk. Reveals a terrifying mix of premeditated murder based in ideology and hypocrisy. Prosecutors are pursuing the death penalty, but I'm glad to see that they are enhancing the charges for targeting Kirk over his political speech. This was not an ordinary homicide, folks. It is a politically motivated execution carried out in Utah, where radical LGBTQ activist groups openly advocate armed revolution. And this is in the red state of Utah, folks, of all places. Wake up. The violence we see is almost exclusively on the left, but you are gaslit that both sides are guilty. No, they are not. In fact, as I have said before, there is the left and then there is the rest of us. The left is psychotic, and the only thing that is worse are those who sit back and ignore it and let it happen because of their addiction to comfort and convenience, which is one of the chapters in my book, America's Systemic Psychosis. Robinson, the assassin, confessed to his transgender partner. Imagine that. Another psychotic and murderous transgender, and another Democrat voting bloc. These are the people that vote Democrat. This is the Democrat Party. This is who the Democrat Party is. These perverse groups are the soldiers of the left, of the Democrat Party, that the Democrat leaders will use to ultimately gain total and permanent control as you continue to watch Netflix. Now back to the assassin Robinson. He confessed to his lover that he had had enough of Kirk's hatred. Now this stems from the propaganda of our leftist media, who should be treated as propagandists were back in World War II. Robinson said that some hate can't be negotiated out. But you see, this was not hate. It was truth that Kirk was speaking to evil. Evil always sees the truth as hate, but they also hate the facts and free speech. These radicals are the same people who will not debate you because they can't. They are irrational and find a loving, enabling home in the Democrat Party. Now, Robinson described plotting the attack for over a week. Investigators later matched Robinson's DNA to the weapon. Here's where we see the deeply embedded problem of the deep state in this country, and where the hypocrisy is such that it should catapult you out of your comfortable couch. This is where the hypocrisy becomes glaring. Groups like Armed Queers SLC, operating openly in Utah, promoting events under banners like the Revolution Will Not Be Voted In and Queer Resistance. Their posters celebrate agitation, Marxist indoctrination, and armed struggle, imagery complete with hammers and sickles and assault rifles. As former U.S. State Department officials Mike Benz noted, the FBI would descend instantly if a right-wing group dared to issue the same calls for armed resistance. Yet, when the LGBTQ communist groups call for violence, they are tolerated, even celebrated, under the guise of diversity. Still, these are the same ideological currents that demand mass disarmament and stricter gun control. They insist on law-abiding citizens cannot be trusted with firearms while simultaneously stealing rifles to assassinate political opponents. The logic is delusional, yet it is spreading, criminalizing citizens who respect the law while excusing violence committed in the name of social justice. We are far beyond the point of pretending these groups are about inclusion. They are openly militant, explicitly Marxist, increasingly violent. A significant portion of society has embraced this psychological inversion, advocating disarmament while arming themselves illegally, preaching tolerance while carrying out political executions. The Robinson indictment should not just alarm us about one assassin, it should wake us up to the movement that nurtured them, and particularly Robinson. Let's apply some logic here. If the law-abiding citizens who own around 400 million guns were as dangerous as the left wants you to believe, then the problem would have already been presented, and it would have presented itself, and there would be no left. It is all projection. They are telling you what they are really up to and are really planning. They want to be the only ones with the guns. And just think, if the left's opposition in Venezuela and Iran had not surrendered their guns, there would never have been the radical criminal regimes running those countries in the first place. Folks, the legacy media groups headed by Soros, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the dozens of liberal groups, many of which are funded by China, our university professors and teachers, 98% of which are Democrats, school boards, teachers' unions, and leftist congressional leaders, including the likes of Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Chris Murphy, Governor Pritzker of Illinois, and Governor Spanberger of Virginia, and the slew of others, are open enemies of America and your freedoms. You better wake up. But you just keep re-electing him. It's just like Pritzker. He just, right after the attempted assassination at the Correspondents' Dinner just a couple of days ago in Washington, D.C., Governor Pritzker of Illinois, he is so delusional, he doubled down on calling Trump a Nazi. This is what's gaslighting everyone into the violence, particularly on the left. Friends, our forefathers would have had them at the end of a rope in short order if they were to come back. We toxically tolerate these people. Too many of us tolerate it because it would disturb our comfort and convenience. Sadly, the only time many Americans will fight is when their back is up against the wall. And by that time, you are at an extreme disadvantage. By the time regular America wakes up, the left has such an advantage that any resistance is futile. We always wait too long and until it's too late. You've heard the term a day late and a dollar short. We just do nothing like so many libertarians do, who, by the way, were created by the Democrats in California during Nixon's time. And too many Republicans are stupid enough to think that they share an ideology with the libertarians. Libertarians are nothing but spoilers. Here's an anecdote. The fake moderate governor, Beshear of Kentucky, who wants to run for president, won office by only 5,500 votes. But the libertarians, really Democrats in disguise, put up a candidate who got 26,000 votes that some stupid Republicans thought by some magic would make a difference. Well, what that did was place Beshear in office by the slimmest of margins. Had the for sure to lose libertarian candidate not run, the Republican governor would have won. Now we're having to face Beshear not only on a state level, but on a national level. Now here's a slap in the face in the true nature of libertarians. Upon the Republican governor in Kentucky losing, the leader of the libertarians, after they had successfully removed the Republicans, said, "Oh, how sweet are the tears of Republicans." The libertarian candidate was never in it to win it. But that shows you how many fools tilt at windmills, as in the famous novel Don Quixote. They live and act in vain. Folks, your destiny is one of doom if you don't start wising up and start fighting. You will have no excuse that you didn't know, because in this day and age with the internet, the information is widely available. There are numerous podcasts like mine that are educating and warning you and giving you the facts. If you say you don't have time, then you are too busy. And I can assure you, you will have plenty of time once the communists take over. Now, you have heard me talk about this before, and I devoted a chapter of it, again, in my book, America's Systemic Psychosis. It's called Toxic Tolerance, or as Liam DeBoer said in his podcast, have you ever wondered why we have rainbow flags everywhere and institutions endlessly preaching tolerance and diversity, and yet feel social life getting narrower, harsher, and more punitive? There's a concept that explains the contradiction perfectly. Herbert Marcuse, a popular Marxist philosopher of old, called it repressive tolerance. In plain terms, repressive tolerance is the idea that tolerance doesn't actually mean tolerating disagreement. It means tolerating only the right ideas and actively excluding the wrong ones. And guess what? Most of my listeners are on the wrong side because they're the target of the left. My friends, this is what the Democrats are today. They really aren't Democrats. They are communists posing as Democrats. Communism, along with Islam, are twins born in hell, and they both have the same and most historic, destructive footprint in the world. An example in chief is the mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. He's not only a communist, he's an Islamist, all wrapped up in one rotten body and mind. But New York City and that atheist den of hell, den of atheists, voted him in. And one thing I want to make sure that our representatives in Congress and our senators don't do is that when New York City collapses, I don't want our tax dollars going to bail New York City out. Well, moving on, you say they seem to promise good things. That is, the communists seem to promise good things. Really? Anyone that stupid deserves a misery, but then that makes you an enemy to the rest of society. I could tolerate you if you didn't have the right to vote, but the simpletons who fall for the left's propaganda are as dangerous as those who spread it. Just as a dog goes back to its vomit, so do the fools who time and time again vote Democrat only to once again find themselves empty-handed. Any politician that promises you everything is sure to deliver you nothing. Just a few days ago, someone in California tried to assassinate President Trump a third time, this time at the Correspondents' Dinner in Washington, D.C., because the shooter, has been triggered by the communists in the media and those on the Democrat side in Congress. Here you have someone with an engineering degree, 31 years of age, crossing the country by train so he can hide his weapons. So he will likely spend the rest of his life in jail. And why? The left, the communists, the Democrats, and the media practice what is called stochastic terrorism, where they demonize someone enough that in the eyes of society, that such harm, if not death, becomes most probable at that point. It is meant to shut you down. Stochastic terrorists listen to the rhetoric of the radical left and the Democrats. They are the source of the violence in this country. Here's just an example. Governor Pritzker of Illinois, Trump is a wannabe dictator. Senator Schumer of New York, Trump wants to be a king, despot, and a wannabe dictator. Governor Timmy Walz of Wisconsin said, as to Trump, no one has ever been more dangerous to this country, and he is a fascist to his core. Then we have Representative Hakeem Jeffries said, we are at full-out war. Then we have Senator Murphy of Connecticut. We are at war in this country and must do everything necessary to save the country. Every one of the Democrats except Fetterman have incited insurrection by whipping up a frenzy in the minds of their adherents. The left, the Democrats, after the attempted assassination, tried to create a moral equivalency saying, well, there's violence on both sides. No. There is no equivalence. It is all on the left, and it's time you all wake up to that. They are of the Marxist mold, and the only way that they seize and keep power is through violence. They gaslight you. They are armed full of lies and deceit, and they get by with their lies as they know that most of you will not fact-check them. These domestic terrorists belong in jail for life, as their crime is against a whole country. All you hear from the left, if you disagree with them, is that you are a racist, or a homophobe, or an Islamophobe, a sexist, or a Nazi. Aren't you worn out with this by now? You must discard yourself of any relationship that engages in that kind of conduct. If you don't push back on this libelous, slanderous, and defamatory conduct, the left is going to corner you to the point that your only option is going to be retributive violence yourself. That's when Civil War 2.0 begins, and it can be avoided, but it will take standing up to the left. As I have said so many times, they are God-hating, American-hating reprobates who are insanely resentful, narcissistic, and sanctimonious. Numerous psychological studies prove it. The only people who are worse off are those who tolerate such conduct. Don't be part of that group. The left still uses the moral language of openness and inclusion, and they sound so nice. But they are poisonous liars. They want to sound so benign, but with them, tolerance becomes its opposite. Their definition of tolerance is really exclusion, folks. Censorship and punishment are rebranded by the left and Democrats, one and the same, as moral necessities. Folks, this is not a cultural accident, but a deliberate political strategy that basically Communist Marcuse argued that classical Marxism failed in the West because people didn't become miserable enough to revolt. You see, at that time, communism was all based upon trying to make the working class discontent. Instead, they became comfortable. So the strategy for the communist revolution changed. So the communists morphed. As de Boer contended, and I agree, neo-Marxism shifted away from factories and wages and toward culture, psychology, and institutions. The problem was no longer just who owned the capital, but who shaped beliefs, norms, and identity. From there came the key move, that if society is structured by power, and if people are trapped in false consciousness, then neutral rules such as free speech, open debate, and equal tolerance don't liberate anyone in the eyes of Marxists. They protect the existing order. Voting or protesting, speech, become steam valves. They let people vent without changing anything in that framework, and in that framework, neutrality is not fairness. Friends, listen carefully. I've addressed this before. The devil deceives, and so does all of Satan's demons. Deception is the hallmark trait of the left, communists, and Islam. For example, the word communism became a dirty word in the 50s and the 60s. So what did they do? They started calling it socialism. Then, when that got to be a dirty word, they started calling it liberalism. And then in the 80s, liberalism became a dirty word, and they changed their descriptors to progressives. Do you see how it works? It's trickery, it's semantics, so you can't see nor understand what their agenda is. A perfect example is we have to get rid of our guns and need gun control to stop gun violence. Well, of course the communists can't take over permanently if the populace is armed. So they gaslight you and trick you to thinking that the gun is what is evil instead of the person who pulled the trigger. So getting back to the communist idea of tolerance, tolerance must become directional. That is, the ideas that reinforce the oppressive capitalist system must be suppressed. Ideas aimed at dismantling it must be protected and amplified in practice. Tolerance doesn't mean openness, according to the communists. It means intolerance towards anything, even marginally to the right of Marxism. That logic explains the world we are now living in. People's careers are destroyed over refusing to repeat delusional ideological claims. We have seen this time and time again over the last decade. Moreover, and more poignantly, the green scam or the climate scam or hoax and energy policies make daily life more expensive and are imposed as moral imperatives upon you. Socialist ideas like universal basic income are treated as foregone conclusions, not arguments to be debated. Meanwhile, going to the gym can get you branded as far right. Believing tradition has value gets you called a fascist, and questioning any of this is framed as hate. The contradiction isn't hypocrisy, but design. Marcuse justified it through what might be called emergency politics. Liberal freedoms, he argued, are luxuries for stable times, but we are always in crisis. Climate inequity, oppression, democracy itself. Crisis suspends norms, and in emergencies, we censor, we silence. Dangerous ideas, we stop debating and started enforcing what's called repressive tolerance. It's a system where tolerance means exclusion, and diversity means uniformity, and freedom survives only for those who agree. So there you have it. Your ease and comfort is producing weak men, and weak men are and will be producing bad times. And with technology and AI now part of the equation, whoever gets the chair last in the game of chairs will remain there permanently, and you will not know nor live in the freedoms you once enjoyed. So now you have the tools, you have the information, and you have the action steps that I've given you to avoid this dystopian future. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jack Richardson for Jack's Corner.